I didn't touch
system.
anything. Oh, but it says recording. Hi, good morning.
All right, you guys ready?
Yep.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Bandstand Convention Hall, Convention Center Special Events Committee meeting to order here. Let the record reflect it's approximately 10:05 on October 28th. We have the agenda. Folks should have a copy. There's one extra copy, actually. I mean, Emily, if you guys wanted to grab that. The agenda's as listed here. We'll approve minutes. We'll go over any correspondence, old business, new business, open up to any comments from the committee to citizens, capture any action items that we have today, set the next meeting, and adjourn. And of course, with this committee, we do try to keep it to an hour, but we'll go from there. So in terms of roll call, let the record reflect that all members here are here with the exception of Ryan and Dale. Therefore, we do have a quorum for today's meeting. The first thing I would like, in terms of roll call, we also have our ad hoc committee members here representing the Chamber of Commerce, Chief Banks, and for those of you that don't know, we have Dan Sligo, who is the new Executive Director of Main Street. So really delighted to have you on board, and super that you're here joining us this morning. So look forward to your engagement with our group going forward. So thanks. All right, so the first thing is in your packet, and this was sent out ahead of time as well. We do have our minutes from September 23rd. So if everybody could just look those over real quick if you didn't get a chance already. And if anybody has anybody have comments or anything on the minutes? Okay, if not, can I get a motion and a second to approve the minutes of?
Moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those who are not in favor, nay. Okay, the motion passes to approve the minutes of September 23rd. I don't think I had to do that then, but I like to. So, there we go. All right, the next thing on the agenda is our old business. And the main thing, I think one of the two main things we're working on right now is the convention center and future initiatives. So love to get a update from Kyle and Richard and see if they have any short and long-term updates for us for the convention center. And one thing I put on here is, actually it's not on here, but anybody who's here is welcome to participate. Your ad hoc members are affiliated with the groups that are ad hoc, so, ex officio, so please feel free to jump in at any time. So, so with that, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Great, thank you. So since the last meeting, which was just about a month ago, due to my crazy travel schedule, Kyle and I have been unable to meet with the hotel group. But, and then as it got closer to Sea-Witch, we decided not to approach Carol and the team because it was a little bit busy here in town. So that's on the docket to happen hopefully before the next committee meeting, and we'll be talking with her to get that date scheduled. But what we did want to talk about is something that we initially brought up kind of informally at the last meeting, and that's as the budget season seems to be coming to a head, you know, checking the possibility of replacing the chairs in the convention center. I think we were all in agreement, although no formal recommendation was made, that that would be a great step in the right direction, because as we reviewed the comments, that was the #1 comment, that the chairs were not comfortable. Bearing in mind that the replacement chairs should not only be comfortable, but not take up a larger footprint, because capacity issues in that room are very critical, especially when we heard from our Jazz Fest customer, if you will, that if we reduce the number of chairs, it greatly changes his business model, as it would for other seated events. So, Madam Chair, I'm not sure if you want a formal recommendation. Obviously, we don't have any purse strings, but it's the thought of your subcommittee that we move forward to research and replace all the chairs in the convention center.
Okay. All right, thank you. I think that's a great recommendation, and one we can take to the budget team. Is there consensus among the committee members that that is something we should take to the budget discussions?
Quick comments.
Okay.
First, the Dewey Hyatt Event Center opened earlier this month. Check their chairs. They are terrific. Carol was there, I was there. I checked out the chairs, how they stacked, where they're stored, how they are transported, and they recline.
Really?
It's not a total, it fights you a little, but it's still reclining. My point is, there's a new horse in town, and we ought to be looking at them more than what their chairs are, because they're going to be tremendous, I think, beneficial competition for our special event spaces. They've done a wonderful job on combining the outdoor with the bay and the indoor. They've made a terrific boardwalk. You can have an outdoor wedding, an indoor wedding, a combination wedding, or any event. And depending how they price it, they're going to be very severe competition for our hotels and our convention center. I think we could go ahead and take a look at chairs, come up with a budget, and then put that in the budget. And then around here, you need a consensus. So I don't think this committee is going to be able to dictate the chair. But if we can get money in the budget and get the proper approvals, I definitely feel we need new chairs. However, I went and inspected the Greyhound event and may comment on that later, but I saw new chairs in the breakout room. Now, I don't know if they were leased but they're blue, and I looked at them and there was no one there I could talk about, but someone had brought some new chairs into the convention center for the Greyhounds to the beach.
Super. Steve, any comments from your end?
No, I think it's a really good idea to do it, and I agree with Peter that, you know, if we could kind of do a visual inspection of what exists locally, that would be awesome.
Okay. All right, good. Yeah, I'd like to go down and see them myself, too. All right, so it sounds like we do actually have a consensus from the committee here to move forward with a recommendation to the full Board of Commissioners to invest in some new seating.
Excellent.
Is it correct? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, super. All right, that's great. Just while we're on that topic, anything else that, you know, from your perspective, Dan, just being here a couple months now, I think, or the chamber that you'd like to add into this conversation? Well, yeah, I guess you do have to come up there, sorry.
It'll be after me. Is it on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Carol Everhart, Rehoboth Dewey Chamber. Just repair-wise or logistics, I would call it, of the hall. So we used it this weekend. We had a artisan show in there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. First time we've done that in conjunction with Sea Witch inside. And I had not used the hall for that type of a show in quite a while. The new signage, these are logistical and minor things, but it creates a big problem. The signage says police only, but that is the way you have to come in to unload.
Wait, say that again? It's what?
It says police only.
Oh,
So like you can't come in the driveway, but that is the side where you must come in and unload.
interesting.
So once we saw the problem, we sent staff out there to try to get them in the right direction. Also, some employees, I suppose, park in that area. That timing hit the same thing. I can fix that. I can make my timing at 8 instead of 9, but that was something that was just a logistical issue to solve. Within the hall, the main issue was, had I known that the radio system and the CD system cannot run through their sound. So the event person needs to know, hey, bring a laptop if you want to run it through the system, because those things just need repair. I'm sure it's a minor cost, but for someone else, it wasn't a big problem for me with this, but for someone else, that might be a really big problem.
Good feedback.
Yes. Other than that, I think everything ran pretty well in there. All minor little things, but could cause a big problem. Okay?
Do you have problems with restroom signage?
Well, I had a comment. Actually, what happened was we put evaluations out on everything we do. And I had a number of people say they need bigger restroom signage. So they were coming in and asking where it was at, and we were pointing to the arrow. I had staff there all weekend, so they got around it.
Talking about this for 2 years. We got bathroom changed to restroom, but if you come out of the hall, you cannot see where to go.
I did have that, several comments on that.
And they're putting up hand-lettered signs, which look tacky and show unpreparedness. I just don't know after 2 years.
Yeah, I think that would be an easy, low-cost fix, too. They were looking for that, and it did show up on the evaluations.
Wait, say that again. Is it the signs to the restrooms?
Well, they have,
I'm
you know,
sorry.
those erase boards that look like an arrow?
Yeah.
They're on a pole.
Yep.
So they just simply took one of those arrows and they handwrite on there with the erase pen, you know, restroom, and so the arrow's
Oh, okay.
pointing. But it's, you know, it's a low, so if your lobby's full, you're not seeing that. So they might want to address that. Small but important. I did have very much on the positive side. We had 40 vendors in there, 30 vendors in there, and we had a kids' activities room in there. And I had a number of people, they liked we had the room, the small kitchen running with food. They liked the food. They thought the facility was clean. Great facility. They all want to come back, but I think 3 or 4. So that's a good sign.
Excellent. Great. Just a couple things real quick there, then we can open it up for further discussion. We got just Steve, just for you to maybe take back, and we'll probably have a follow-up meeting maybe with Sharon, but a couple pieces of feedback Carol gave, very positive feedback overall, but a couple things that we're going to ask the city to look at. I'm speaking for us, but please tell me if I shouldn't, and everybody else jump in. But you know, the parking lot, the employee parking lot, it has those signs that say police only, and it was confusing to folks who were coming in to load, unload in the convention center. So just one piece of feedback. The radio and sound and CD system, I guess, doesn't run through the through the sound system. I don't know if that's something's broken there or just it's not set up, optimized setup, or it's not in operation. So that's another one to follow up on. And then the last thing I think is the signs to the restrooms aren't really clear, and what is written on those little boards, it's handwritten and just not clear to people. I think, did I recap that correctly? Okay, excellent.
Did you use the stage?
We pulled the screen down and ran information about the festival, you know, how it got its name, pictures from past years, that type of thing. So we had a laptop that we ran through the convention hall system and showed it on that screen. So I did not have vendors on the stage, but I did utilize it that way.
Did you have speakers? I mean, anybody speaking? Or?
No, I was planning on playing the radio or something
Right.
through the system, but it's not operational.
No, the Greyhounds had a similar problem.
Okay.
Okay. So just to finish up that one, just something to think about. I was thinking about yesterday when I read the Facebook posting about the dog parade being, I think this is the second year it's been canceled, right? Yeah. So I know probably this is gonna, well, anyway, something to think about. I wonder, since the convention center was used on Sunday, I don't wonder if we might not think about having the dog costume contest in there. Just something to think about. We have to talk to the city. We only have approval right now for the Greyhounds.
The first issue we ran into is because we were serving food. I believe the Greyhounds got a waiver to have the dogs in there because
If they didn't
have
serve food.
So we were
Yes, true.
serving food. We had some people that tried to bring their dogs in, and we had to unfortunately tell them that they weren't
Yeah,
allowed in
that's
because
true.
of the food.
Okay.
And you do have about a couple hundred dogs that participate in
Yeah.
the dog parade, plus a couple hundred people watching the dog
Yeah,
parade.
we had 700 dogs here for the Greyhounds, and they were in and out of the convention center, and
Yeah.
my understanding is it went very well, so. But the food thing, you're absolutely right, that's kind of a no, like, we can't do it if there's
budge on that
food.
one.
Okay, well, I figured you guys would be on top of it, of anybody, but, and asking those questions, but anyway.
The Greyhounds, I hope everybody got to get in there, but it's terrific example of many issues and how to resolve them and how to plan for improvement. Food. Great concern that they had dogs, no food, but they had people and they needed food. Their solution was to use the firehouse for food. The firehouse sells hot dogs or something I didn't know. However, terrific opportunity for food trucks. If you have an event in there with animals, you could still put some food trucks outside. There was great concern about parking. But there is the bus area for parking, which I'm sure the powers that be could allow some food trucks in. But these are just examples of how to maximize our opportunities of the convention center, which I don't think we are doing to the best of our advantage.
And that's probably also a Main Street thing. I know that code's in place to kind of make sure that we're promoting the many, many restaurants we have in town. So, you know, that's, but I mean, I get you, the bigger picture is like there's ways to work around these things, as the Greyhound group did, and as you guys well know. So, so it's just something to keep thinking about. Yeah, Chief.
Confirm that with the food trucks, you're absolutely right. It's the businesses. If a food truck even comes in town at all, before they're finished setting up, I've got phone calls from businesses,
Yeah.
Restaurants saying they can't do that. You need
Yeah.
to go and
What
tell
about
them,
the business food trucks?
Well, that could, sure.
Oh, yeah, that's something can be worked out. I'm just sitting there saying, and
Yeah.
saying it's food trucks. So that's why you don't see that necessarily like you do in other towns, because
Well, I
we usually
wasn't
get the
thinking of
calls.
competition.
Yeah.
I think it's something Main Street should talk about, and if there's going to
I'm
be a
not sure
food truck
legally you can,
war,
if you open it
we
up,
have the
I
police
don't
on
know, you
our
can just
side.
say it's just in-town businesses if you open up food trucks.
Well, you could do other things. I
But, yeah,
mean, to your
but-
point and yours. I mean, you could. I mean, I'm just throwing this out. You could have the Main Street work with the businesses to set up tents outside, and any restaurant that wants to have a tent could have it. I mean, there's things you can do. Is I think the point that Peter's making.
But if
Even to
somebody
encourage.
rents the hall, they should have the ability to vend food to their participants. Phone calls notwithstanding.
But
That's a
if there's
state
somebody
law,
gonna
by
be
the
in
way.
parking lot,
Yeah.
tents, that's gonna fall into a special event as
Yeah.
well. We take care of what happens
Yeah.
in the convention center. If you're gonna have events also happening in the parking lot, that'll kind of make it into a special event, and you'll have to coordinate with the police and
Mm-hmm.
other parts.
Yeah, there's the application you fill out with what you want to do, and I've seen it actually work this year. Saw it with the Greyhounds. Is they filled out the application, sat down with the chief, sat down with comms, with Steve, with city manager. You know, worked out solutions. You know, figuring out what we could or couldn't do, and it worked out pretty well and very accommodating. Did somebody have their hand up here? Yeah.
Yeah,
please.
just in terms of
Yeah.
long-term vision,
Yeah.
you know, your suggestion of the dog, you know, having a backup for the pet parade and having the craft show indoors kind of speaks to, if we are thinking parking structure, of what that ground floor of that parking structure might be suited for. You know, in addition to meeting space that could be utilitarian, if it was flexible meeting space, you know, all opened up, it could be backup space for outdoor events as well.
Yeah, very good point. Good point. Thanks.
There's a new theater being built in Massachusetts, which the parking garage has been specifically designed to serve as a special event space.
What town, Peter?
Williamsburg.
Oh, out west, okay.
It's the head of, who was head of MoMA, retired.
Oh.
He's got Geary doing a theater in this small town.
Geary?
I'll get it for you.
Wow.
Interesting. Yeah, it's worth looking at. And Chief, could you just, I'm sorry to just real quick on this. I actually was just a little bit surprised that those signs went up in the employee parking lot, police only. So maybe you could just give us a little bit of insight as to, because it's not police only, actually. It's the employee parking lot. So I was actually a little curious why it's designated police only as well. I'm sure there's a reason. I just thought it'd be helpful to understand that.
The one sign say police about crossing, so emergency vehicles and all that,
Yeah.
please, because we're coming in and out of there, so we want to make sure people will know when they're coming up. I think, again, I want to speak for the city manager, but it is employee parking, but people don't always sit there and see, pay
Yeah.
attention to that, and you start saying police, people kind
I
of
see.
watch that a little bit more. But you know, again, as part of design, we're not going to change. To Carol's point, it does get confusing, but at the same time, we're trying to bring, unfortunately, prisoners or whatever to our salad pad. We've got trucks backed up or
I see.
blocking that we can't, the alleyway, we can't even go in or out, and they back up in front of the sally port overhead doors. And they say, well, I'm only there for a minute, but we've got to, meanwhile, we're waiting to go in with a prisoner, and
Yeah.
we're trying to send somebody inside to try to locate them,
Yeah.
to move a vehicle and truck too. So again, it's partially designed, so I think they just, people kind of watching when it says police, but it does get confusing.
Yeah.
The same issue after they're done unloading on where do they park, because the other side was completely filled up. So we did give permission to allow people this weekend to park where the buses were supposed to go.
Right.
However, wasn't coordinated with the DC buses, and we had 4 come in. I think it was 3 or 4.
Oh, and there
4,
wasn't space.
and they were dropping people off on Lake
Yeah.
Avenue and things.
Yeah,
So,
I heard that, and I was like, why are they
so
dropping off over there?
you know, it's darn if you do, darn if you don't, because we saw the need, and
Yeah.
I didn't see any buses on the list. I had called over to Parking Division Friday, so therefore I went ahead and just allowed them to try to accommodate where we could, because Friday there was just nowhere to be found. I know Emily was out there, and a gentleman stopped me, and he'd gone all the way down to 5th Street, saw 6 back streets, and couldn't find anywhere to put his truck and trailer. So we just let them park, but in fire lanes around the convention center. So it's not totally the best thing, but we made do.
Yeah,
I
sure.
don't really answer your question about signage. Just try and just keep it separated as much as possible.
Got it. Got it. Okay, thanks. That's helpful. I kind of figured that was there. Any other comments on this this topic?
Is
Kyle?
that the only loadout
Yeah.
zone is beyond where the police garage is, correct? But you said you're having issues with people basically if you were like a convoy of cars blocking the whole
And
situation.
the next thing that comes into is, again, design and understanding. It's actually a one-way. You can't go around the building the opposite way.
Right.
So cars, we really don't want them coming in that side anyway. What we want to do for events, to almost have them come on the main parking side on the east side, come behind the building, and then, but it does say police
Yeah.
only going there. So maybe on the back
yeah.
side, we can do something different
With the
instead of police
signage.
only.
Yeah.
Is that what you were, maybe I was confused. Is that the sign you're talking about behind the building?
Yes.
From on this side?
Not the one off of Rehoboth Avenue.
Oh, by Bad Hair
parking
Day. Okay, okay, now I was kind of wrong on which sign you were talking about, because the police emergency vehicle sign's here, so we're talking about the Bad Hair Day one. We might be able to do something different for that.
Something to think about. Yeah.
I was hoping it would be as simple
That may
as.
be a quick, easy fix.
That's why I was hoping to be something as simple as, adding a small sign underneath that says "and authorized vehicles only."
Right.
But then if you're going to have people, you probably need a sign as well that says
It gets
cannot
a little
block
tight,
this area
but
as
I
well.
think we're okay as long as they don't block and continue through, and then we could line them up easier, I think, to unload and then move out, so. I think it's a quick fix. Now I got the picture where you're talking about the sign. That's an easy fix, and I'll work with Steve and city manager on that.
Do we currently send out unloading and loading instructions for events? Because when I photograph a lot of weddings, I have pages sometimes of where to load in gear, where to park your vehicle. There's all the questions are answered right there, and it's just, okay. So I was gonna say that would be a big thing if you say to enter through
Yeah.
this section and go through here and park here. That would be pretty beneficial.
If I might just add a comment, in talking with Bob Nye at the Greyhound event, which they loved, their biggest problem, biggest issue was information. They couldn't find out how to do things, where things were, and I think this goes back to the trifold versus the detailed brochure that we had back in the original days. But this is an issue. People are getting frustrated. They can't figure out how things work. On the other hand, they saluted the employees. They said they were terrific and had nothing bad to say about them at all.
Yeah.
Information was the concern.
Okay. Great. Okay, cool. Well, good discussion there. Let's go ahead and go to old business B, the update on hourly rates. And Steve, you want to walk us through where we are there?
Yeah, so I'd like to give a special thanks to Stephen Perry, who not only provided me with the entire listing of the elements to the convention center that have pricing associated with them, but he provided his insights to help me try to determine what this hourly rate sheet should look like. So I give a special thanks to him. And so expanding upon what I presented at the last meeting, we also included the conference room 1 and 3 because of the nature of potential usage as expressed by Carol Everhart and her folks. Highly unlikely that you would need to use the kitchen or have a need for a lot of trash being generated, need for IT or internet services. So I left those as not applicable in the hourly rate structure, although the daily rates would apply if needed. And Stephen also pointed out that, you know, these things are not like broken down by time. So if you do have some type of a special service that needs to be provided, it would be difficult to kind of separate it from what the daily rate would be. So it made perfect sense. And so that's what I presented here is that the, similar to what last time, the convention center for-profit rate of $100 per hour, nonprofit at 75, and then for the conference suite, conference room 1, conference room 3, $50 for the conference suite per hour, and then 30 for each of the breakout rooms. And Stephen also provided feedback that he thought that made sense. I can't remember if I heard from the chamber, but you were okay with the larger hourly rates for the main area. And so I would be interested in what your insights are to the competitive nature of these rates that I presented today.
Nope.
As they are today, you're talking about the daily rate for weekday and weekend as they are today?
Well, no, I'm talking about the hourly rate just for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh, okay, as I'm looking at it here.
Yeah, because we're making no changes from 2019 to 2020 for the daily rates for the week and for
That's
the
what I-
weekends.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure I was looking at the right
Yes,
thing here.
yes.
I think these are good. My question would be two things. At what rate, at what hour does it become a day? In other words, I rent it, and I'm assuming also that this is no setup. In other words, I just want to come in, throw my yoga mat on the floor, do a yoga class for an hour.
And as I thought through this, I thought there needs to be some flexibility and some empowerment allotted to like Stephen as he takes the calls
Okay.
to make a call on that to say, okay, is 4 hours, do you go up to the daily rate, 5 hours, whatever. But I think because of the flexible nature of having an hourly rate structure, it probably would be on a case-by-case basis based on the facts and circumstances for each.
I would agree with that. Having
Steve's shaking
done,
his head. so-
I would absolutely not want that. I want it to be set. I don't want to be accused of, when you gave this person this deal and this person that deal, oops. I want it to be set in stone. I don't want it to be negotiable or case by case, because that leads to people getting hurt and accusations of unfairness.
But I think we're starting to get away from, I think if it's more than just an hour or two, then it should be the daily rate. And
Oh, that
I mean,
needs
the
to be
whole
set.
purpose of this was for yoga classes, like meetings that
dance
would be just.
classes.
But
Okay.
But again,
So-
the intention was to keep this simple and everything, but every, I'm getting a little bit frustrated because I ask for information, I ask for feedback from the experts, and then I'm told to bring a different colored rock every time we get together. So I apologize for what I just said, but it's, you know, I've been through this a couple times now, and I've asked a lot of questions, and I think we need to put this to bed.
Well, in a way, we're saying the same thing. Where I agree with Steve, I've done a lot of programs with Recreation and Parks, and it was hourly. At some point, there was a policy. This, this is an hourly rate up to 2 hours, 3 hours. What is after that? You're paying a daily rate, okay? So we opened it up for hourly programs, but at a certain point, there was a policy so that the employee or whoever's at the front counter isn't taking the heat or accusation.
And I agree with that, but I'm looking to the people who deal with this to advise us on what makes best sense.
So what's
Because
your-
I would
The
say
pricing.
4 hours. Is there any objection to if it's up to 4 hours, you can pay the hourly rate? If it's 4 hours and 1 minute, then it goes to the daily rate. So if we can get a consensus on that, then I can add a note to this that says the hourly rate applies to periods up to 4 hours.
Okay. Do we consider that a daily rate is 8 hours plus? See, this is where the policy comes in, because if you're going to open it up to hourly, which I think you may get some business from, it's not being used, it's empty, you're getting nothing, it has to be very clear for the buyer and the seller, this is what it is.
Yeah.
You can rent it.
Up to 4 hours sounds, is the proposal on the table? Does that sound
you're the
reasonable
front
to
line.
everybody,
To
Steve?
break down and you can put together the event too, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a 4-hour event. They have to be
Right.
out. In the 4
And
hours.
my understanding is that during the week, it would be during normal business hours. Is that correct?
That's what I would recommend.
Okay.
I mean, and I'm looking to the person who takes the calls. I mean, when you have other daily events that go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, when are they usually out of here?
So what are normal
But
business hours?
but does it go to like 8 o'clock at night very often, or?
Daily events, I mean, you can.
But again, it's still the daily rate, though. Okay.
And this includes move-in and move-out?
Well, see, that's another question. I've got a million questions for you. too.
Okay.
I know you've sent emails and asked for feedback indirectly, but I had many questions about how it's gonna be implemented, and I don't even know if that's your purview, you just give us the rate.
But what guidance and direction do we give for the daily rates for these times? Because to me, those same guidance and direction would apply.
When we rented for a program, a short meeting, that type of thing, we would have an hourly rate. Anything that went over a certain hour, we used 3 hours because 4 hours can be half a day, okay? And that could make a difference in what you're making and not making. So we would go up to 3 hours. You can have an hourly rate, no setup. If they have to do a setup because people want to sit around a table and there's no table set up, you're going to charge for that, but it's going to be minimal. Once you get into big setups and breakdowns, you're getting into daily things. You're not getting into hourly things.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I have a lot of non-applicables here based on the email exchange I had with Stephen. Now, my recommendation would be that we don't offer anything outside of normal business hours for these Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday hourly rates. If they want to do something that they start earlier in the day and it goes into the evening, that's a whole different thing. But it was never my intention in looking into this that you could come in from 6 to 7.
Correct.
And so I think that we don't, I mean, that is something that if somebody called and said, hey, can I book it from, after 5 o'clock? The simple answer would be no. I mean, I can put a couple footnotes on this
We
thing.
would use during normal business hours.
Right.
That's your.
And if it's up to 4 hours, you can get the hourly rate. If it's beyond 4 hours, then it transitions to the daily rate.
I'd have to ask Steve that because we used 3 because it got into the half day. So if you were making less money to charge them an hourly rate for 4 hours versus a half a day rate, you'd stop it at 3. See what I'm saying?
Well, I think the intention is to encourage usage.
Okay.
And I tried to offer a half-day rate, and that pretty much got shot down pretty quickly because then what's a half-day?
Okay.
So I tried to keep it as
Okay.
simple as possible, And again, I apologize for expressing my frustration, but the reason that I reached out to folks is you could anticipate questions that I had no idea. I didn't know what I didn't know.
Okay.
And so this has been very helpful today, and I thank you all for your patience. And so what I'm hearing is that I can add a couple footnotes to this that says, these hourly rates apply to normal business hours, which are 8 to 5, and that the hourly rate, 8:30 to 4:30, and that the hourly rates apply to any periods up to 4 hours. Beyond that, it would be the daily rate. So that is incredibly helpful to me.
Richard had a comment as well.
Yeah, I guess more of a suggestion. I think, to Stephen Perry's frustration that things should be black and white, I totally agree. And we probably need some formalized booking policy guidelines, which Stephen could then just send out as a PDF attachment. So you probably have the starts of some, but I guess I'm going to volunteer, Kyle and I, to go out, do a little field research on what booking guideline policies might look like for other buildings, and come back with a proposal after talking with Stephen to make sure that we get all the questions answered.
Is that helpful, Steve? I mean, I want your feedback
I
on
think
it.
the city manager is gonna be the one that actually decides the policy.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of the questions, and I apologize, because these have only been coming up to me periodically too. I haven't thought it through myself, but like, right now, everyone that does the day rate signs a lease agreement. If someone's gonna be renting for an hour, are they gonna sign a lease agreement? Are they gonna leave a security deposit? Are they gonna have to provide their insurance like everyone else does?
But I think that needs to be covered in the, so what I'd also recommend is that we don't publish these until we have booking guidelines.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, are we gonna have two separate lease agreements? That's a possibility.
We might need a
One
short
just
form and
simply-
a comprehensive.
Yeah, and that's, we've rarely had anyone ever damage a center. I think in 2 years, I've had to keep one security deposit, so it might be kind of ridiculous to have someone leave a security deposit for an hour, so maybe we'll have two separate lease agreements, two separate applications.
Yeah.
Just something I thought through. If someone rents the center for the evening, say a Thursday evening, they're paying the day rate. Do I then still rent the center during the day to someone else? I guess I can't, even if the people aren't using it. I mean, we just block it off for that whole day because someone's paying the day rate for the evening event?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, without knowing anything other than what you just said, if the evening rate group needed to start setting up at 5, then any group that would be in there before that time would have to be out by 5, and the space would have to be returned to what the original look was. But I don't see that just because somebody books it in the evening and they're subject to the daily rate would prohibit using it earlier in the day.
Right.
Whether it's an hourly event or whether it's somebody that's going to be more than
They're
4
technically
hours.
paying for this whole day. Well, I'd still rent it to somebody else during the day because they're not using it. I just want to make sure that that's clear. That
Well, and again, I think some of the drivers going to be what the daily rate is. Are they going to be willing for 3 hours in the evening to pay, the $550 or $600? And that'll the size of the event, whether they're making money, whether they're selling tickets or whatever the case may be, I think would factor into that.
Just hearing you talk about the nonprofit and for-profit too, again, not to keep bringing up more stuff to make you frustrated, but will a profit enterprise use it for even an hour? Like maybe we could have it just for nonprofits. That's just a thought. Again.
Well, again, you're trying to anticipate the questions that are asked. Who knows? I mean, I don't know. And so maybe you have it and it's never used, but at least you already have it. And if once the word gets out about the hourly rates, we don't want to prohibit somebody from having it. We've made the conscious decision to offer a different opportunity for the nonprofit
Saying
organizations.
for nonprofit people,
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind saying if you're a profit organization, you have to pay the whole day.
But it's to me, it doesn't harm us to have a for-profit hourly rate.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
just
think
may never
about-
be used.
Think about the small corporations that need a boardroom for a couple of hours, and they don't want to pay a hotel boardroom fee. We're going to be very competitive at those hourly rates.
So for something like that, then we would charge them for setup time too. I think that should be definitely in a policy if we put one together. You know, if you're looking to make money by filling the place, we're not going to make money unless we're charging them for all the time they use, you know, setup and breakdown.
Well, I thought kind of the overarching objective was not necessarily to make it a profit center, but certainly a revenue center. So, I mean, over time, I think we would want to look at whether the revenue is keeping up with the costs, for maintaining it and for the services and all that kind of good stuff. But then that information would inform us on establishing rates for future years. So I'm not so sure that all that information is captured because we try to keep things simple when you're kind of a multitasking, one-person operation.
Exactly where Stephen's concerned.
And so,
Yeah, just from my point of view, like, and it's helpful that you'll be on board with this too, just to have it all.
Right,
as
exactly.
much as
This
we
is
can
kind of like
decided
a-
before we launch this thing,
But-
just thought through.
But I think
want
a lot of these things, I can't thank Richard
Yeah.
enough for suggesting that we have booking guidelines and that would also kind of be an opportunity to expand, like Peter said, as far as information. And so having a more comprehensive document that people could use, I think would be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, that's basically my plea in a nutshell. Before the new rates are just launched, like, think it through, really through, and have policies.
So in my stumbling around here, if I've done nothing else, I've acted as a catalyst for getting the work started on having a booking guideline
Yes, you're a
established.
provocateur, yes.
So I'll take credit for that.
Yeah, sure.
No, oh, I'm sorry, did you want to say something? So I think this was an excellent discussion.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and Steve, thanks for your work here, and Richard and Kyle, thanks for your future work that you're going to do on working with Stephen on booking guidelines. And I want to go back to something Stephen said, is it like, does this group set rates and recommend rates, and then Sharon decides, the city manager and the city team, not just Sharon, but, does the city team? And I actually think the answer to that question is yes. Yes, we set rates, and then it's up to the team to determine how to implement and answer these kind of questions. In this case, given that we have, some expertise here on conventions, it'd be great to make some recommendations to you and give you a template to work with. But in the end, it's the city employee's responsibility and the city manager's responsibility to execute.
Agreed.
So that's how I'd lay it out. So I think in terms of the rates, I think is there consensus that these should be the rates?
Well,
However, the rates shouldn't be put into effect until there is some sort of booking guideline.
I think the latter.
Yes. These are the rates, but the rates
So
shouldn't go
these,
into effect
these
until.
these can kind of be tabled until we have the kind of the instruction and the booking guidelines
Are they
established.
tabled, or like, we're done with this, we have rates, now figure out how
Well,
to implement?
again, I think what we're hearing is that they should not be published because all
Yes.
of these questions remain unanswered. Hopefully, they'll be answered through the booking guidelines. And then once the booking guidelines are established, then we could publish the hourly rates.
Right. But at this point, we're not going to go back and debate whether it should be $100
no,
or
I think
$50 or
that-
$20.
I
At
think the
this point,
feedback
these are-
we've gotten from the folks who
Directionally
really
is-
know is these rates are competitive
Yeah.
and fair. It's just what's all of the other stuff that needs to be built around it so that Stephen doesn't have to play arbiter every time.
So let me make sure I have this. If I have this right, so tell me if I got it right, group.
worry, I'll tell you.
Oh, believe me, I know that rundown. So I'm going to try to summarize this. The consensus of the Bandstand committee is that these are the appropriate rates going forward. However, they should not be published until there's booking guidelines established. Correct?
Yes, correct.
Is that?
Agreed.
Peter and Steve? Okay, and the booking guidelines really, are the jurisdiction of the city manager and the team. However, given the expertise we have on this group, we'll provide you with a draft template to take forward and implement. And once you decide what that is, we'll bring these forward to the full commission for approval.
That sounds fair.
Fair? Okay.
How
And-
smiling he is.
I know.
It's like excited.
And Stephen, thank you for the good work you
Yeah,
put
but
into
again,
this.
I don't want to frustrate anybody else more. And
No, no,
and
no.
I didn't think it through myself. All these things came up to me like, what about this? What about this? What about this? You know, like,
Well,
it's-
I think
'cause
what's
it's pretty
nice is
simple.
in the midst of frustration, we've come with a positive solution, which
Yeah,
is always a good thing.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And I think it would be fun just to have that place
Yeah.
filled all the time. It's such a shame that it's always empty.
exactly.
All on board.
And we have fixed costs that we have to cover in there too.
I think
mean,
it
you know,
could.
We want new chairs.
And we
It
want
could
new chairs.
help for bringing in larger nonprofit groups too. If people come in and do a meeting for an hour and then
Yeah.
decide they like the space, and currently I think we were at 26% is for profit. The math, 26% of the events that we hold are for profit. The rest are non-for-profit, and that's broken into the individual events. If you break it down further into the days that is held out for each event, then it's more not-profit events than for-profit events. But I think that could really bring in some more for-profit events in.
Good point.
Just updated revenue.
Yeah, so we'll move to the next agenda item, which is other initiatives. And the first thing is, Stephen, what's going on with the convention center? Give us a little rundown of how things are, and we'll go from there. Thanks.
I mean, it's going well.
Great.
Every other day I get a call for an event. I mean, 2020 is looking really good. People are really interested. All kinds of new stuff all the time.
Where are we? Do you know offhand the dollar numbers for 2020 yet, or? Just- okay.
Because the contracts
Great.
haven't really come back yet.
Yeah.
But it's
Got it.
everyone that is here for 2019 is coming back for 2020
Oh, that's
and
great.
2021.
Oh, super. Do you want to give us kind of your perspective? And I think you were on, well, I can kind of, I feel comfortable quoting Sharon on, Steve, she sent us a note on the Greyhound event. And as you know, the Greyhound event in the convention center went through a good year of debate as to what it would be like to have, or if we should have the dogs in the convention center themselves. And one of the conditions was that this was going to be kind of a probationary or pilot for having the dogs in. And feedback we got from Sharon post-event was that I give that group an A+, and I think the city should welcome them back with open arms in the future. I think that's pretty high praise for how they ran their event.
Yeah, no,
So
we-
what's your take?
I thought it went great. I mean, they were really trying to cover everything. Of course, they couldn't, Little bobbles happen here and there.
Yeah, sure.
Especially on the first day. But overall, I think it went really great.
Great,
No,
great.
no problems.
Great, good. And
And just to make sure I understand, when you have the breakout here, the columns that have like, I guess, convention hall, convention suite, C1, C3, kitchen, trash, IT, the numbers that you have in there represent the days that
Correct,
the
yeah.
service was required? Okay, fantastic.
great.
Steve, I spent a lot of time at the Greyhound event, and I've got a lot of comments that I'm not going to go into here. But one, other than what I've already mentioned, is significant. The dogs and urination and lots of concerns were a big issue, and they paid a lot of attention to it. But there was a big problem. There's no water spigot on the outside of the building, so they could wash down the urine spills when the dogs left the building. And I walked around with the producer. There's lots of irrigation, so there's water. They were taking bottled water and using it. I mean, they were really concerned. They had groups really overseeing. They want to come back. They loved it. It was a great experience. But isn't there some water on the outside of that building someplace? Or
So, I mean,
No spigot?
Hose hook up somewhere,
So-
I think.
It doesn't seem like that would be a huge addition.
it's not a big deal. I mean, the hose, there's water there. It's just plumbing a spigot. But little things like this are very important in this kind of an event, and we should look into it.
Not even just for dogs, for other, if somebody spills a bunch of stuff of food outside, you'd like to be able to clean it up.
Well, and also for like the auctions, they bring vehicles in, they bring everything like that, so it'd be nice to, just generally for any event like that.
building has a lot of design issues, in my opinion. I'm not gonna go there.
It's a whole
Yeah.
different story. We don't want to get into, but anyway, that's a good one to bring up, so. Okay, well, this looks super, great.
Steve, quick question. Do we have pipe and drape?
Not something we offer. No, they have to rent it.
Rent it yourself, not through us, correct? Okay. All right. Good. Thank you so much, Steve. Great update,
Steve?
great feedback. Oh,
Steve?
sorry.
So I remember last month you said we were about to pass last year's total revenue. Did
We already have. We did 86,000
Okay.
last year, so not by a ton, but we've passed.
Okay. Just wanted to give you accolades for that.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. Okay. Any other initiatives or anything anybody wants to bring up? It's interesting just having kind of two main things that we're focusing on. Really takes up the agenda of this group, which I think is a good thing. But is there anything else anybody wants to bring up?
I wanted to bring something up, actually.
Sure.
I'm not sure if this is only just me, but when I was looking at the events online, they actually don't show up when you click on the calendar on your mobile devices. So it brings you to January 2010 events, and that's not as an actual calendar. So I've checked it on a few different.
2010?
Yeah, I've checked on a few different browsers. I've checked on a few different types of phones. So I've come to the consensus that when you go online, you go to the city's website and you click events, you're not actually going to the events page, which is.
It's a broken link.
Yeah, essentially you have, usually about that, the average is around 60% of people look at stuff through their mobile devices, but I'm assuming that's gonna be very high on people on vacation because obviously you're not bringing a desktop with you. So it's probably, 90% of people are looking for events and they're not coming and they're not finding them on the city's website. And I know some of the biggest traffic from looking at your core report is to your events page on your website. So I think that's a huge thing that's being missed out. People can't figure out where the event is or what's going on, how are they going to show up to it? So that's
Great
something that I
point.
noticed, and I was
There
like,
is no master calendar. Period.
yeah, there would be. I know that the calendar that is there that you can access through desktop, it's good. It's gotten better, but there's definitely a few things that could be
Great.
it could be utilized for that. So and I was out trying to figure out an event situation. I looked on my phone to figure out for my own need for my business, and I couldn't figure out because I couldn't get to it. And I even did dive in and searching through the web pages to try and find it the hard way, and it just doesn't seem to exist. So.
Would you mind sending me just that?
Yeah.
A summary of that
Yeah,
with the
absolutely.
links that aren't working, just so we can clear that up specifically. Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point. So we'll get that to the special events coordinator, Chris Johnson. Would that be the right title? Everybody has multiple titles in the city, so I think we'll make sure she has. I think she runs the website too, so we'll make sure that her and Sharon have that info as well. But maybe you guys could give them a heads up, as Chief and Steve. Okay, cool. Really good point. Any other comments from the committee members? Yep.
I'm a big fan of the Book of Rules. And the Book of Rules number 24 is believe everything you read in the press unless you have knowledge of the subject. According to the press, we are in negotiations with ClearSpace for them to take over or move their operation to the convention center when their lease expires. If I was ClearSpace, I would be looking at some very interesting.
Excuse me, I'm recused from any discussion on ClearSpace, so if you want to have this, Steve, can you take over?
But okay.
Well, I just want to make one point.
Go ahead. It's okay. Sorry.
If I was ClearSpace, I'd want to negotiate some special rates. And if I was the city, I'd want to consider turning the whole building, four-walling it to them and covering all of our expenses and let them try and recover some of their expenses from subleasing. But I don't think this committee is involved, and I'd just like to know if we're going to be involved or if we should wait till film at 11.
Our committee chair is not here. So no comment from city staff.
Film at 11.
Okay.
I'll get Lisa.
Done with ClearSpace.
All right, any other committee member comments? Okay, any other comments from the citizens? Anything from you, Dan?
My name is Dan Slago. I'm the executive director of Main Street. Just more observing today and getting familiarized, and it's very interesting. So I just have a few. I want to thank Kyle because we're expecting for a community unity dinner about 500 people. So the parking instructions would be great. So when I'm selling tickets, that I can make sure we give out parking instructions so there's no confusion at all. So thank you on that. Again, I'm learning. Do I ask questions about the bandstand here? Do I?
Yep.
Yeah. We were thinking about having a cocoa crawl in December. Can we have music playing from the speakers? I don't know who we would, so.
Steve, do you want, or, excuse me, not Steve, Chief, do you mind just telling them, just real quick, just, we could talk, you can talk in more detail, but there's a whole special events
What happens is it comes with
procedure,
special
so.
events form, so just start out with Chris Johnson.
Okay.
With special events. He'll show you, she will send you a form or send you a link to it, and you just fill that out, and then we get together and ask any specific questions and try to accommodate. We try to accommodate as much as possible.
Oh, okay,
within the
great.
rules. So, that's where it's going to start at, and we'll just have individual meetings about what your needs are.
Excellent.
So I guess that's the easiest way.
cocoa crawl to have
Yeah.
Christmas
Yeah.
trees or something.
I'd start now, though, for sure.
Absolutely. That's what I'm thinking.
Definitely start, like,
So,
right now,
just go
yeah.
ahead. It's online.
What's the date
and
of
you
the
just
cocoa
reach out to
crawl?
Chris Johnson.
Okay, great, thank you.
What's the date of the cocoa crawl? Well, just
It'll be
curious.
on Thursday
Okay,
evening, 12. We're working on it right now, but
great.
we want to bring it back because it was so popular, and we're trying to keep it as
Yeah.
simple as possible, not so
Great.
involved, Other than that, the convention center too, with me being out in the world, downtown, I'm hearing from a lot of merchants, they want to have people have conferences at the convention center, but the hotels don't seem to be working for bringing in big groups, price-wise or different. This is what I'm hearing, so I don't know this for a
Interesting.
fact, that, even if it's 50 people or they want to use the convention center, but they want to get the rooms, it's been tough trying to have special deals with the hotels to bring people in downtown and be able to utilize the convention center. Just a little
really good
FYI, what I'm
observation.
hearing.
For renting out blocks of hotels is what you're
Right,
saying? Okay.
right.
So there's price resistance on the hotel
Correct,
side, or?
yes.
So one of our strategies, and since this is your first meeting, it hasn't
Yes.
happened yet, is Carol's going to make an introduction for Kyle and I to the hotel group, which is made up, I assume, of directors of sales and marketing and the general managers. My background is 28 years with Marriott Hotels, so I'm hoping that we can build a bridge kind of how that this building and the hotels might work closely together. But we haven't met with them yet. That will happen soon.
Great, thank you. That's all I had.
Yeah, Dan, would you be interested in attending that meeting?
Absolutely.
Because do you have your own hotel group for
No,
Main Street?
no.
Okay, yeah, great.
No, this is something I'm working towards.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, super.
Thank you.
Good feedback and right on target with where we want to go in the future and what they're working on specifically. So thanks and welcome again. Great to have you on board. Okay, any other comments from anyone? Steve?
Just if you're curious, weddings? the
Oh,
weddings?
sure, absolutely.
We have 69 weddings so far in 2019. We had 88 in 2018, so it's a little behind because the jump and then the going back lost a few people.
Yeah.
Curiously, we had 13 weddings in October in 2018. We only had 5 this month. So that really fell off for some reason. I don't know why. We have 2020. We have 10 weddings booked so far. We had 13 booked at this time last year. So that seems to be kind of on par. So maybe it's getting back,
Yeah,
on track a little bit.
that's interesting. I wonder if it has something to do with
Okay.
the Hyatt too, given their wedding packages, so. Price point still, okay.
Yeah, October used to be the biggest month, and
Yeah.
this year was September.
Huh,
So just
interesting,
interesting.
okay. That's worth keeping an eye on, so thank you. Okay, all right, anything else? Okay, a few action items that I had here. I think, Chief, you're just gonna look at the signage, maybe just to see if there's any way of clarifying some of the signage, especially for loading, unloading. And also, Stephen, if you don't mind just bringing up to your groups or whoever's appropriate in the city, signs to the restrooms, and also the issue with the AV systems, not syncing up, and seems to be an issue there.
Carol, if she could put all her concerns in writing to me, just so
Great.
things don't get misconstrued, and I'll forward it on.
Sounds perfect. If you don't mind, Carol, that'd be great. Let's see, Steve and I have the recommendation from this committee to take to the full Board of Commissioners, a recommendation that we put in the budget for commissioner consideration, new seats that kind of meet a couple parameters, are much more comfortable. Recline, have cup holders. Okay, well, that's not the requirement, but at least are much more comfortable, but are easy to store and don't necessarily, and we actually don't want to lose seating in that process. So kind of those three big requirements. Yeah. Got it. And then I think the other thing is Kyle brought up an excellent point about some of the web links being broken. So he's going to send us a list of where he's seeing those issues, and that's what I have listed as the. Oh, and then the other thing, is, I'm not
other
going to
little
forget you,
item.
my friend. And Richard and Kyle are going to work on some booking policy or instructions and work with Stephen directly on that. Okay, great. And then, of course, the hotel meeting we're still going to have. Did I miss anything? Okay, great. Next meeting date, I guess I'd like to have it like in a month since we're still working on those things. So if anybody has a calendar right in front of them. Wednesdays seem to work out pretty well. Is that November or?
that's November.
So November, maybe November 13th at, it seems 10 or 11 is a better time. So you want to target November 13th at 11?
I'd rather go a week later just
Okay.
because
Okay.
that'll give us 4
Got it.
weeks rather than
Got it.
2 weeks to work on
Okay.
these booking guidelines.
So November 20th at 11?
10 o'clock?
Oh, nice.
Oh, so would Thursday be better if we moved it one day?
21st? Okay,
Works for me.
okay.
Thursday, November
21st. Works for me. Okay, so November the 21st at 11 o'clock, I think seems to work. So let's put that as the next meeting, and we'll continue with these two main agenda items as we're going forward. So I think that's, well, excuse me. Well, we'll just get updates on what's happening with the convention center, where we are. We're completed with the hourly rates at this point, but maybe just an update on where we are with the booking instructions and where we want to go forward there as well. So that's that. Okay. Any other final comments from anybody? Okay, the meeting's adjourned at 11:06. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.